All you CAD designers out there, we've got something for you. It's a short 1-hour course called Resilient CAD Modeling, or RCM, and teaches you a defined set of rules and best practices for creating robust CAD models that don't break. Spend more time designing your product instead of fixing a broken feature tree. Learn more by going to learnrcm.com. That's learnrcm.com.
Hi, everyone. We've set up this Being an Engineer podcast as an industry knowledge repository, if you will. We hope it'll be a tool where engineers can learn about and connect with other companies, technologies, people, resources, and opportunities. So make some connections and enjoy the show.
Everybody out there who's building an engineering career, you are the CEO of your own career. And what do we list on the skills that it takes to be successful there? Mostly certifications, degrees, technical skills. We only talk about engineering. Nobody talks about the skills to build your career.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Zach White, he's widely known and regarded as a coach, known for changing the game in engineering career and leadership coaching. He has worked with hundreds of engineering leaders from top technology companies to industry leaders in manufacturing and design, where a lot of our listeners come from. Zach is the founder and CEO of Oasis of Courage, known as OACO, a fast-growing company with unique improving coaching programs exclusively for engineers. He also hosts a top-rated show, the Happy Engineering Podcast. Everything that I mentioned here now will be in the show notes, all the links, so all of our listeners can go and visit these resources. So, Zach, welcome to the podcast.
Raf, what a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me and excited for the conversation today.
Of course. Well, this question may catch you a little bit off guard, but that's the beautiful thing about having a conversation. This is not all scripted. There's some questions we have, but also we fill in the gaps with some things that pop up in our minds. I wanted to ask you, you reached out to us to be on the podcast. I looked in your profile. I thought you were a perfect fit. But what about us? What about the podcast caught your interest?
Well, is there anything better than a title like Being an Engineer? That statement by itself, captures the whole essence of my coaching, my program, what makes us as a breed special. People joke, like, oh, you're an engineer. That label comes with a lot of baggage, both good and bad in society, right? And I thought, man, it's just so simple, so brilliant. Say, being an engineer. What is that like? What does it take? All the different challenges, the ups and downs, and listen to, I forget which episode it was way back, and really loved it. You're on my list. And then it was time to say, you know what, I really want to take a bit of a podcast tour and spread what we're doing with the Happy Engineer podcast. And you were at the top of my list, Raf. So I love what you're doing. I think it's a great show, having a repository of knowledge and then helping people to apply that. I mean, at the end of the day, such a valuable service that you're offering. So I love it.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. And you actually gave us an idea. We're going to start advertising our podcast on other engineer-related podcasts so we can cross-pollinate some of our audiences. So if anyone's listening out there that you think we should advertise the Being an Engineer podcast on another podcast, please let us know what that podcast is. We're not abundantly wealthy, but some mid-tier podcast would be a good fit. So this is a step in the right direction also for us to grow. So now let's ask you about your bio here that I read. You said that you help you have a fast-growing company with unique improving coaching programs exclusively for engineers. So any skeptical engineers, analytical engineers listening to that statement will automatically think, can you define what you mean by unique and proven?
Yeah, absolutely. Love the skeptical engineer. And I'm the same way. Just as a quick FYI, Raf, I have a couple engineering degrees myself. I started my career at Whirlpool Corp, mechanical engineer, leadership development program. And I totally relate to the skeptical starting point of life. And let's face it, that makes engineers great at what we do. We ask questions. We don't take things at face value. So what do I mean by unique and proven? Well, just like we mentioned a moment ago, being an engineer, the training and the fundamental personality and mindset that we bring into life looks different than people who come from different backgrounds and a different perspective. So when you talk about coaching, you talk about career development, there's a lot of pieces of that have become very generic. The area of life coaching, and not to discredit life coaching. If anybody listening has a life coach, it can be a tremendous asset. But building an engineering career requires a special set of experiences, skills, mindsets, tool sets. You think of it this way, Raf. If I asked you, hey, what would it take for you to build an engineering business? You're going to list engineering skills, but you're also going to list business skills, right? If you're the CEO of your own company, you've got to know something about business. And yet, everybody out there who's building an engineering career, you are the CEO of your own career. And what do we list on the skills that it takes to be successful there? Mostly certifications, degrees, technical skills. We only talk about engineering. Nobody talks about the skills to build your career. And that's not a course at Purdue when I was there. Nobody ever talked about the fact that to build a successful career in engineering took more than great engineering acumen. And at the end of the day, the challenges that engineers face in their careers are many, and we're not given what we need out of school to deal with them. So if you don't get fortunate enough to learn those on the job from a great mentor and coach, around you, getting help is a really important way to shortcut that. But that's what makes it unique, is we are unique in our mindset, our personality, our training, and understanding how to navigate an engineering career looks totally different than sales or entrepreneurship.
That's fantastic. You are the CEO of your own career. That is definitely going as the title of this podcast. But let me follow up on that, which is, can you give us some golden nuggets for some of us that really focus on the theoretical in college and we want to become the CEOs of our own career? How do we take the first step?
The first step is absolutely to embody that statement and take full responsibility. If you're the CEO of the business, the buck stops with you. You have full responsibility for the outcomes of that company. And it's the same in your career. If you're going to decide today to be the CEO of your career, then you can no longer blame and complain and point to things outside yourself that are unfair or unjust as to why you're not achieving the goals that you have for your career. You've got to take full responsibility. So I would say, if that statement resonates with you, I am the CEO of my own career. The very first step is to embody that, to take full ownership of that and responsibility. Because without that, you're going to keep falling back into the old patterns. You're going to keep doing the things you've always done. So step one is own it, take responsibility. And step two is then learn how to get into action quickly. If there's one thing that I see consistently, especially with junior engineers, people who are getting their first start in the industry, it's this tendency to hesitate, to overthink, to overanalyze, to let fear of making a mistake or getting the wrong answer hold you back from really getting after it and taking the necessary steps and risks, taking the actions to advance in your career. And, that's crippling for so many people. So learning how to strengthen that ability to be decisive, take action, there's a lot to that, but I would put that in as the first place to focus. Ask yourself, how good am I at really making educated but quick decisions and getting into action instead of doing the same thing I might have done in college all the time, which is go to the library and just keep studying, keep trying to get smarter, just keep thinking. You can't think your way to a great career. You got to act your way to a great career. And so that would be a couple of points on where you want to begin.
This is incredible value. I'm taking notes myself here. Thank you. So let's see. Have you worked with mechanical design engineers in the past?
Absolutely. And I hope my software and IT clients or my civil engineer clients don't get offended when I say this, but being a mechanical engineer myself, I've got a soft spot, Raf, for the mechanical design space, because that is exactly where my career started, and I love it. There's nothing quite as joyful to me as getting into some good old-fashioned product design conversations, man. It's great.
So a lot of product design engineers listen to this podcast, amongst many other engineers, but let's focus on the design engineers. What's like a typical thing that you see, like a pattern with mechanical design engineers, people that use SolidWorks, CAD, that they get themselves in trouble in their career, like in a rut? What's their main complaint when they come to you? What do they need help with?
The complaints are all over the place. There's 1,000 different versions of why people are stuck in their career. And Raf, they all do boil down to a few core themes and challenges that people face. But let me, for the sake of this conversation, make it as absolutely simple as possible. Every problem in your career is a people problem. Every single problem you're facing is a people problem. And where I see my clients coming in with the wrong mindset is that we spend so much time focusing on the product, the technology, the systems, the tools. And we always want to look to those things as the source of what's not working. And we approach our career the same way. And sometimes the quote unquote systems might be something like blaming HR or blaming the toxic culture or these other things. But at the end of the day, we think about all of these ideas as systems, right? We conceptualize everything. And at the end of the day, Raf, your career barriers are people problems. All of them. Even if you say to me, but Zach, I'm really stressed because we have a project deadline that's really, really tough, and we're having to put in extra hours and work the weekends, and that's my problem. Like, that's not a people problem. That's a project, or that's something on the product that's the problem, right? Well, let me ask you this: why is there a deadline? Who put the deadline there? Some human put the deadline there, right?
I like what you're getting at.
if there was no deadline, solving the problem would be awesome. Like, you love to solve problems. You're an engineer. That's why you signed up for this, is to go solve gnarly problems and do hard things. Like, we love that. We geek out on that. Shoot, half of our hobbies, like wrenching on cars or motorcycles on the weekends, are doing the exact same types of things that we do in the office. But there's no deadline because there's no human on that org chart who's setting some constraint around how the work needs to get done. So, all of the problems that you're facing boil down at the end of the day to a people problem. And learning how to navigate that in all of its different facets is so, so important. And then, Raph, I'll add one more thing. The biggest people problem you have is yourself. Nobody else, yourself. All leadership begins with leading yourself. And we often want to point at something else outside of ourselves first. And I remind all my clients, hey, let's clean up our own house before we go point at everything else around us that's not working.
Sounds like this is coming straight from the Bible almost, the way that you frame it. That's pretty cool. That really resonates with me. Let's see. Do you have a book or a resource that people can read and learn a little bit more before they reach out for a consulting call?
This is a tricky question for me, Raf. I'm going to tell you why. I used to be, and I still am. I believe wholeheartedly leaders are readers. Reading is so important in your life. I don't want anybody to hear this the wrong way. But I used to be a person who was addicted to passive action. And okay, what is that? We're engineers. Let's define the terms. Passive action, contrary to or in distinction with massive action. I want you to understand these are two different things. Passive action feels like progress, but it does not actually move the needle on the results of your life or career that matter. Reading listening to this podcast, even, thinking about things, all of the consumption of knowledge, consuming knowledge, that massive addiction to input of knowledge, that's all passive action. It can be important. You do need to read and learn and grow through knowledge, but you can read every single book in the freaking bookstore and not change your life at all if you never take massive action. Massive action is when you actually get onto the court, into the arena of your life, and you apply what the book says. Raf, you've given your listeners absolute gold mine of information on this podcast. But my guess, if I was a gambling man, is that very few have actually, at the end of each episode, made immediate and meaningful changes in their life. And so they're great at passive action, but they're still struggling with massive action.
So how do you transition?
Great question. How do you get into that point? It's a muscle. The ability to get into action is a muscle. Literally take the metaphor of working out. If you want to get a bigger bicep, what do? Do you look at it and think about it and dream about bigger biceps and just hope, right? Do you read 10 more books about how to work out? Absolutely not, right? You got to get over to the freaking dumbbells and start curling, put in the reps. Okay, if you want to get better at transitioning from learning and passive action into actually getting results and massive action, it's something just like going to the gym. You start today, you make that easy, low-hanging fruit decision. Start small, start simple. Okay, don't boil the ocean. Pick the simplest thing you can do and do it right now. Get into action immediately. Get that first rep. Awesome. You curled the dumbbell. Well, guess what? One rep doesn't turn you into Schwarzenegger, right? Like, you got to keep going back and just practice and practice and practice. And your nervous system, your psychology will learn. Your subconscious, it's so good at just paying attention to what's working in your life. And suddenly you're taking action, you're getting results, you're getting this practice, you're getting these reps. All of a sudden, you have this neural pathway that's strong. Neurons that fire together, wire together, and boom, like you're reading something and you're immediately asking yourself, like, oh, how can I apply this right now? Like, oh, I'm going to call that person right now. I'm going to make that change on my calendar right now. And you're like, wow, who is this person? Like, how did I become this wild, decisive action taker in my life? Well, it's the same thing as you go to the gym every day consistently. In 30 days, you may not notice much. In 90 days, you're going to start to see a change. And in a year, you may look like a completely different person. It's no different here.
Like a completely different person. It was almost like the face recognition on your phone may not even recognize you when you try to unlock it after doing all that.
Raph, and it's funny, but it's true. I've got clients who will literally get feedback from their bosses or from their peers after a 90-day coaching program, and they will say, like, who are you? What happened? Like, you're acting in such a different way. You're leading at such a different level. Like, what's the difference? And it's just 90 days of consistent action along, proven systems and tools. And so it really isn't rocket science, but man, it is hard, right? Like, most people don't go to the gym every day. Why not? Well, it's not because it's hard to go to the gym, like, or complex. It's just hard. Like, mentally, we have a comfort zone that we've lived in and is working for us. And to make those changes takes a lot of discipline and a lot of effort.
All right. This is wonderful. I think it's a great moment to take a quick pause to remind our listeners that the Being an Engineer podcast is brought to you by Pipeline Design and Engineering. Pipeline partners with medical device and other device engineering teams who need turnkey equipment such as cycle test machines, custom test fixtures, automation equipment, assembly jigs, inspection stations, and more. You can find us on the web at teampipeline.us. So we're here with Zach White, and in continuation with our conversation, this is kind of a deep question. How do we figure out what we want?
Wow, Raph, we are cannonballing into the deep end there.
Yeah, it's who I am. Yeah.
I think it's such an important question. And here's the truth that I find with 100% of my clients is that it's so rare that we actually take the time and the level of introspection and care to answer that question fully, to bring full integrity to that answer. What do I want for my life and career? And I've got a 90-day coaching program to answer this question. Of course, in one conversation on a podcast, we're not going to be able to get the answer for you. But let me give you a couple of keys in terms of how we move towards clarity, real clarity on what we want. And clarity is power. When you feel clear about your vision and you know exactly what you want, it is 100 times easier to move quickly towards that outcome than when you sit there and really, if you're being honest with yourself, you're unsure. Because if your energy is, defrayed across all these different ideas and there's no clarity, there's no power. It's just like a laser. We're engineers, we get it. You concentrate that energy and you can make so much more happen than you can if it's diffused. So one of the key principles about creating clarity is the principle of contrast. And again, I love talking with engineers about this because we understand, what contrast is. Think about the display on your computer, your 4K OLED televisions, all these amazing technologies around creating better contrast. Well, what does contrast allow? When we create contrast, we can see the distinctions, we can see the lines, we can see what is separate from something else in any particular picture. Well, in our lives, that's something we need to begin to be aware of and intentionally do, is go create contrast. And we do that through broadening our experience and creating awareness of how we actually feel and respond to those experiences. So, widen the aperture, do more, experiment, taste, test, be an engineer, go test some things. You don't have to commit to change the whole trajectory of your life to go see if something resonates for you. But if you really have a lack of clarity on what you want, one of the first things you can do is go get some clarity on what you don't want, right? Try some things, test that out, go shadow somebody, have a conversation, learn some more about a different area. And as you get these experiences, we want to start paying attention. Well, is this one really resonating for me? Do I love this? Or was that pretty boring? Or did I hate this? This is an absolute no for me. Well, both are valuable. Something that you like creates some contrast towards the direction you want to take your life, and things you don't like creates contrast in the opposite end. And the more we can build out that picture, it's like we're going from an old cathode ray tube to, that 4K OLED, where now you actually have the contrast in your life to see with clarity. Oh, the sweet spot for me, my zone of genius, and the vision that I have for my life looks a lot more like this. Here's what I don't want, and here's what I do. So I think, the work that we do to get there, there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of approaches that we use to accelerate that process. But that's one of the core principles about how we really discover with integrity and clarity, what is it that I want?
This is wonderful. The value that you just keep on providing is amazing. So let me ask you this. Let's say that one wants to shadow someone because we think that we may like this career, but we don't want to be annoying with the person. Maybe we find them on LinkedIn. This person seems to have the job that I one day want. How should the outreach be done? Any advice?
Yeah, first thing is pay attention to your own mindset about that question. Implied in even the way we ask it. And Raph, I would do the same thing. I don't want to bother anybody. So how should I go ask them? Well, look, you've already begun the question from the premise that doing this is going to bother them. And I would just ask you, turn the tables for a moment. Imagine yourself, you jump on LinkedIn, and here's a more junior engineer, or maybe a peer, somebody at your level. Shoot, maybe they're above your level. And they send you a really genuine, really authentic note that just says, hey, my name is Zach, and I saw your career path. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm truly inspired by the work that you've done. And I know that you probably have a ton on your plate and you're super busy, but if you're willing, it would be such a tremendous gift if you'd be willing to jump on a quick 15-minute phone call with me and just share a little bit and answer a couple of questions about how you've created the results that you've created in your career. Would you be open to that if I, shared a link or could be available at a time that works for you? How would you feel if you got that note? Probably pretty
It'll be
honored,
hard to say
right?
no. It'll be hard to say no.
Yeah, it's like, wow, that'd be really great. Okay, so now you've got 15 minutes. Awesome. We start with a small ask. have a phone call. Be curious. And then at the end of that phone call, here's what I'm going to do. Say, hey, Raf, this has been awesome. And I can't thank you enough for being so generous with your time. I know that you're busy and you have a lot to do, but there's so much more I would love to discover about what you do. And this really confirms for me that this might be a direction I'd love to take my career in the future. So would you be open to spending a little bit more time together, or maybe even, letting me see some of what you do, if there's any context or any way that might be able to happen? So I'm asking that question on the call. Well, listen, the person's already demonstrated by getting on the phone with you that they have that generous spirit. And if there's one thing people love, it's to talk about themselves. It's the opportunity to let their own successes and story be the subject matter of somebody who wants to receive mentorship and coaching from them. It feels amazing. It really does. Anybody listening who's a mentor, you know how good it feels when you have a mentee who just genuinely needs the help that you have to offer, and they take your advice and they go change their life. It feels awesome. So again, it doesn't mean everybody's going to have the time or be willing to spend the time, but be courageous to go out there and ask. Because if you don't ask, you already have a no, right? If you don't ask, it's never going to happen. But if you'll go and just start doing this, I guarantee you're going to find people who are more than happy to create those opportunities. And, I've seen it happen for my clients time and time again. They just get started, and within weeks, they've got multiple opportunities to have really meaningful connections with people just because they led with generosity, authenticity, and didn't have the fear of bothering someone in the way of reaching out.
No, that's fantastic. You've given us a template that we should all craft and modify. And by all means, a lot of people may be listening to this, but who actually takes action, like we discussed, maybe not a lot of people. And hopefully that comment incentivizes people to actually do take action. But you've taught us to reach out in a polite manner that may open the door for us. I'm a big believer in relationships, especially with mentors, being a two-way street relationship. Like, I want to offer value to the mentor. I don't just want to take. So what's some advice in how a mentee could offer value to a mentor, in addition to making the mentor feel good about themselves because they're giving back?
Raf, I'm so glad that you brought this up, because I agree 100%. Every connection you make, we want to approach it from the position of generosity, lead with value. And so when you go to somebody who's more advanced in their career than you, truly you're approaching as the mentee, it's easy to think, what do I have to offer for this person? And maybe feel like, well, I can't connect with them because I have no value to give. And I just want to tell everybody that is not true. Okay. That is a belief that is in your head. That is not true. And let me just give you 2 quick tips on this. The first one is so radically simple, it seems like it should be obvious, but people don't do it. Just ask. Just ask them. One of the most powerful questions in a networking call is, hey, this has been really tremendous. I'd love to know, how can I help you? What do you need? Just ask. Like, Raf, it's so simple, right? Like, does it get any dumber than that? Like, it really doesn't. But here's the thing: if you'll do it, if you will just ask, a good number of those people are going to say, "Hey, thank you so much for asking that. That's really kind. I'm good. There's nothing you need to do for me." But they're going to feel the energy of that generosity, because you got to be sincere. Let me back up a step. If you don't actually have a generous spirit, then you're going to struggle in the networking game, okay? Because you have to be real. This has to be from the heart. But if you sincerely ask them and just let them answer, okay, if they say something and you can do it, you actually can help them, then follow through, right? Take the action, make it happen. So that's one thing. The second thing is offering another connection, right? Connections are super valuable. The old adage that your net worth is equal to your network is super true. And so if you have somebody at your company who's more senior, or you have another mentor that you think this mentor that you're connecting with might enjoy meeting, or your neighbor happens to be a rock star, whatever, like make an offer. Hey, this has been so helpful. I really appreciate your time. And, I'm wondering, this person that I know I think you'd really enjoy connecting with them, and the two of you may have a lot in common or be able to add some value to each other. Would you be interested in me connecting you with so-and-so? That's another really easy point of value you can make. And then I'll throw out a third. I said two, but I'm going to give a bonus, freebie. If this one's on the house. So third thing, as a mentee, one of the most powerful acts of generosity and value that you can give your mentor is to go absolutely crush it with the insights and the advice that they gave you. Do it. Take action on it. Get the result. And then go back to them and show them, hey, Raf, I did exactly what you said. It worked awesome. I got this amazing result, and I can't thank you enough. That act of just really being a great mentee by taking action and doing it and then giving them the feedback that they made a difference in your life, honestly, that might be the most valuable thing you can give a mentor, because so often they're just giving and giving and giving to all these different people who want advice from them, and people don't actually do it, or they don't ever come back and say thank you. So that's another really fruitful thing to do.
That's fantastic. Have you ever done something really well in life by instinct, and then somebody explains to you the science and the logic behind it, and you've been doing it right all along? Has that ever happened to you in something?
Yeah, there's a couple places where that's true for me. Some of my sort of social intelligence skills, I feel pretty fortunate that, my upbringing or whatever, it just kind of worked out that I had a good style in those ways. And I've been blessed, as an engineering leader, that was a huge asset. And it's part of what makes me a great coach. But, I think, Raf, at times, we don't give ourselves enough credit for how many things we have instinct about. And frankly, if we would just trust ourselves and take action and get out there and do things, you're often way better than you think you are in some domains. Now, of course, we say that immediately we're going to point to an exception, right? Somebody who's overconfident and cocky or arrogant and whatnot. But again, be careful letting an exception or some area maybe where you've been burned in the past then get painted across your whole life. Raf, I think it's an interesting question you're asking, and a lot of people probably have those experiences.
Thank you for answering, because as you were answering the question as to how to give value to a mentor, I've had a lot of mentors in my career. I sold a mobile application. The world of being a founder, you do need a board of directors and mentors. And I've been doing this right the whole time. I'm kind of like patting myself in the back. I always ask how I can help the mentor. I come back with the advice that they gave me and how I did well on it. And the third one, which that's actually the second one that you listed, which is make introductions. I do that too. So I've been doing it well, and I didn't even, the results have shown to be good, but it reinforces that. So thank you.
Hey, Raf, you're welcome, man. And I'm not surprised. You're absolutely the kind of guy who clearly is crushing it in these areas, and keep doing what you're doing, man. It's working.
There is one thing that I'm sure I'm not the only person that needs help with. I have somewhat of a clear vision of where I want to go, but I don't have it crystal clear yet. So how does one come up with that map in addition to trying things, what we discussed previously on the call? What can we do to really zero down on what it is that we want to go after and have a map?
Maybe, Raf, to help me add more value in the answer, can you describe what's the difference between, a general sense and crystal clear? How do you actually see the distinction of what would crystal clear look like to you?
Well, for me, in instance, is and being specific helps because we can be specific about the feedback. I want to do design engineering for products, consumer products, but I'm also interested in medical devices because I really care about people's well-being, and health is the most important thing. If we don't have health, we have nothing else. What good is it to have all the luxuries in the world if you have no health? So it's like, okay, I want to do both. Which one should I focus on? And I'm not sure. I'm not crystal clear about that yet.
So, perfect example. Some people might call this the fork in the road moment. I've got two paths. They both sound exciting. Which one should I go down? And we build this model in our mind, Raf, that to the left, or to the right, And in the back of our mind, there's this little voice, there's this fear that says one of those two is the right path and one of those two is the wrong path, and I don't want to make the wrong choice. Well, here's the reality of life. It's not a series of forks in the road. It's a single path. And you're going to make some right choices and you're going to make some wrong choices. You're going to hit speed bumps of failure and you're going to hit these amazing celebrations and moments of success. But between you and your ultimate vision, between you today and your ultimate success is going to be a series of wins and losses. And we just keep moving. And here's the metaphor to help answer the question. I'll come back and get to, so how do we do this? Think about it like a cybernetic system. Feedback system. I mean, we're engineers, so we understand feedback loops and systems and control, right? If we don't have error that we can feed back into the algorithm, then we're not able to make proper adjustments and get back on track. So imagine a torpedo. You lock onto a certain target. If you can imagine your career at its ultimate peak of success, what would you want to be doing? I want to be a vice president of engineering and making a huge impact in the world in these areas. And I don't know exactly what company, but okay, this is the picture of ultimate success. I have this vision that I'm locked onto. All right. Well, you've got this torpedo and you want to go hit that target. Well, what do? You got to launch the thing. Right? If you don't start moving towards it, you're not going to get any closer just sitting there in the hull of the submarine. Okay, so you've got to launch it. Well, what happens when you launch it? At the beginning, you just start collecting data. Are we on track? Are we off track? Right, and we take that error and we feed it back into the system and we make an adjustment. Well, you can imagine any missile or torpedo situation. What does it look like? Lots of gross course adjustments at the beginning. And then as you get closer to the target, it starts to hone in. You make smaller and finer adjustments, then eventually, bang, you hit it. Well, Raf, it's the same way in life. We need to just have a sense of what's that ultimate aim? What's that longer term vision? What's the thing that's true about what I really want to create in my life? And there's going to be lots of little decisions between here and there to make. But if we stand still and just think about it, it's like you're that torpedo in the hull of the sub. You're not going to be able to make more clear distinctions by just sitting there thinking. You can't think your way out of it. You got to start moving. You got to start moving. And here's the beautiful thing, Raf. You go as far as you can see. You may not know exactly the next step, but you just, or how to get like all the way there, but you just take the next piece as far as you can see. From that place, you're going to be able to see to go further. Right? So just make sure you keep moving. If you have these two paths, like, all right, how could you get a taste of both? Like, can you go shadow, things we talked about earlier. And ultimately, you may have to make the scary decision to pick one. Guess what? Just pick. And when you get there, if you don't love it, if you feel like, you know what, my torpedo's off course, then make the gross course correction and change. That's a beautiful thing about decisions. It's not your last one. You get to make another one. So, that'd be the way I would approach it, is we got to get out of that mindset of this is the last decision and it's left or right. Let's just keep moving forward.
But the idea also is to expedite when you get to that point that you realize that you may want to change trajectory. You don't want to do that for 10 years and then realize you should have changed, right?
Yeah. And Raf, that's where doing deep work to truly understand the vision, that clear picture of the distant future that's important to you, really helps, because there's only two things that are true: the vision and what I'm going to do in the next 90 days. Everything in between is just a wild guess on how we're going to get there. I know what OACO, my company, what it looks like 5 years, 10 years from now. I know the big vision. All right. And I know what we're going to work on in the next 90 days. Everything in between is just a wild guess. I have no idea how it's actually going to play out because there's a million factors that are outside of my control. And so to your point around how do we expedite? Well, the biggest thing that causes people to bounce back and forth is the fact that they don't actually have that North Star, right? There's no north on their compass. And so as they start taking actions, they're never actually sure if they're going the right direction or not.
That's wonderful. Well, as we come here to an end, is there something else that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Wow. I'd love to explore something off in the weeds, something different. One of my favorite things about engineering leaders that I meet and coach is that each one of them has that cool part of their life that they don't talk about that much, but is really, really interesting. And we were pretty technical today. So I guess the question you didn't ask that might be fun for somebody listening to this is, who is Zach not the coach?
Okay, tell us.
I love it. So, I'll share one side of my life. There are multiple, but I like to dance. I'm a dancer. So, most engineers do not spend a huge amount of time on the dance floor. But when I was at Purdue in college, in undergrad, I joined the competition ballroom and Latin dance team, which, if you knew my upbringing and the story of my household where I came from, this is the last thing on the planet that my mom ever expected that I would do. And I'll just leave it at this. If it weren't for Monica, I would not be a dancer. But Monica got me hooked on the idea that I could become a ballroom dancer. And ever since undergrad have dabbled in competition and doing ballroom and Latin and swing dancing. And I'll tell you, if you're looking for a way to get out of your comfort zone, strengthen your body and your mind and build relationships, I'll tell you, dancing is pretty awesome. So as the world kind of comes back to a sense of safety and normalcy after COVID here and dance floors open back up, I'd encourage you, go check it out.
Absolutely. I danced bachata and salsa myself. I'm better at bachata. And my main thing that I'm best at dancing is hip hop.
No, Raph, you're a hip hop dancer. Come on, man. my love for you just doubled. I already thought you were a rock star, but now that I know that, see, this is why we need to cover this. I love that you're a hip hop dancer. You have to send me a video sometime of you hip hop dancing.
There's one on my website for you and anyone listening. If you go to rafaeltestai.com, just my first and last name.com, you scroll down, not too far down, you'll see a little video of me dancing hip hop.
I am so there after this interview.
Amazing. Well, everyone, how can people reach you?
Yeah, I really appreciate the offer. And the best way to connect with me and the work I do is over at the Happy Engineer podcast. For podcast listeners, you can find it on your favorite platform, whatever that is. You could also jump to thehappyengineerpodcast.com and all the bonus content and ways to connect with me and my team. And also would be happy to set you up with some free coaching just as a thank you for listening to this great conversation and extending that offer to your listeners. So jump on that website. We have a link there to book a quick call to get some basic info. And then my team will set you up on my calendar or one of our executive coaches and give you some free guidance and see what you need next to build your career. So thehappyengineerpodcast.com and be an honor to have you check us out, get to know me and our team and listen to the show.
Fantastic. So when people reach out, they can say, I heard you on the Being an Engineer podcast, and I'd like to inquire about a little bit of the free coaching, something like that.
Yeah, it's all set up right there on the site, super easy. And just mention you heard about me here, and we'll get you all set up.
Amazing, Zach. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Raph, I really appreciate the invitation. Such a pleasure. And again, for everybody, they already know this if they're listening, but what you're doing, the value that you're creating for so many listeners, it's awesome. Keep doing it. And I just appreciate you, brother.
I'm Aaron Monker, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines, and with product design, visit us at teampipeline.us. Thanks for listening.